Here's what's coming today on the Woodworking Network podcast.
The more and more I worked on it, it became reflections on experience I had in the industry. And so, again, it was almost storytelling or anecdotes, why this is important.
Welcome to this episode of the Woodworking Network podcast. Join us as we explore the business of woodworking, big and small, and what it takes to succeed. I'm Will Sampson. Today's episode is sponsored by WoodPro Expo California. We'll be talking with renowned woodworking educator Patrick Molzahn about a new groundbreaking textbook for woodworking education that he recently finished. But first, I want to talk about education to open doors. My formal woodworking education began when I was in the first grade in Los Angeles Elementary School in the early 1960s. At the time, somebody had decided that we should introduce woodworking as part of the curriculum at the earliest grades. All the classrooms were equipped with metal lockers that held a variety of woodworking hand tools such as crosscut saws and coping saws, hammers, squares, rulers, and the like. It was all quite primitive, and it was taught by the regular classroom teacher as a fully integrated part of the curriculum. We were doing a unit on transportation, so you took a pine board and nailed it crosswise on another board to make a wing for an airplane. You took a board and cut two 45-degree cuts at one end to make the prow of a boat, maybe a rounded cut at the opposite end with a coping saw for the stern. If it was to be an ocean liner, you stacked up and nailed on steadily decreasing size boards for the superstructure and cut dowels for the smokestacks. For the trucks and cars, you nailed on hobby store wooden wheels. Always biting off more than I could chew, I wanted a helicopter. So I used a coping saw to cut a shape out of a board, made some propellers with popsicle sticks, and had a very rough facsimile of a Chinook twin-prop chopper. I painted it with blue tempera paint. Many years later, I ran into a longtime woodshop teacher in the Los Angeles area, and I asked him about the program. He remembered it and said it was widespread in the system for a number of years, but had been dropped at some point. Probably a budget cut or some kid was spectacularly injured. I have no idea. All I do know is that it awakened in me the concept that I didn't have to buy everything or beg my parents for it. I could make it myself, and wood was a marvelous medium to do that. It also taught me practical measuring skills and how to make one part fit into an assembly of other parts. These days, too many kids go all the way through a dozen years of schooling without learning those basics. Don't ask me about all the stories I've done over the years about high school graduates who couldn't read a tape measure. Learning of all types tends to open the door to more learning. Okay, I know what I can do with a hammer and nails now, and a saw. What about other tools? If I can make simple wooden toys, can I make something else like furniture or a cabinet? What happens if I can use power tools? It also opens the door to understanding. If you take woodworking classes and go to buy a woodworking product, no matter how bad or good you were in the class, no matter how basic or advanced the class, you won't be able to buy that product without exploring how it was made and how well it was made. In some cases, such an early acquaintance with woodworking skills might open your mind to the opportunity that eventually becomes your career. But that can't happen if you don't know the opportunity exists. All these years of more and more schools closing their woodworking programs have made the demise of woodworking as a career a self-fulfilling prophecy that we have to work hard to reverse. Before we get to our interview with Patrick Molzahn, let's pause for a word from our sponsor. It's really easy for woodworkers to stay stuck inside, focused on their shops and production. But over the last couple of years, the pandemic has forced them to be even more isolated than usual. Now it's time to get out of the shop and resume life in the outside world, especially when it's a chance to network with your woodworking business peers. That opportunity is coming April 27th to 29th in sunny San Diego as the Wood Pro Expo joins with the Closets Conference and Expo to offer an unparalleled opportunity to boost your business with intelligence on techniques, tools, and technology. Let's get face to face again. Learn more at woodproexpocalifornia.com. See you there. Now let's learn about this great new woodworking textbook from Patrick Molzahn. Today, our guest is Patrick Molzahn, director of the cabinet making and millwork program at Madison College in Wisconsin. He was a founding board member of the Woodworking Career Alliance and the first person to earn the Diamond Credential, which is WCA's highest standard in woodworking skills. His latest achievement is the new 6th edition of the book Modern Cabinet Making, which I think is the most comprehensive woodworking textbook ever produced. Welcome to the Woodworking Network podcast, Patrick.
Thank you, Will. It's good to be here.
Before we get into the details of the new book, can you give our audience some information on your background? How did you get started in woodworking and woodworking education?
Sure. I was actually trained as an architect. I worked in the industry for a couple of years, but I was always a hands-on person. I made my way through college doing carpentry work and fell in love with building. And so design build was my ultimate goal. So eventually I started my own shop doing architectural woodwork and residential remodeling, custom trim work, and did that for a few years. Along the way, my wife and I love to travel. So we've been around the globe. We've been to over 35 countries. We lived in Japan for 2.5 years where I taught English. And so when we moved back to the States in 96, I started my own shop and did that for a few years, but missed teaching. And so I had the opportunity to start teaching at the college part-time, and that led to a full-time position. And that's been just the journey since, kind of bringing together my love for design, my love for building, and communication. And so it's the best job in the world to be a teacher. And it's opened a lot of different doors. I've been able to travel all over for the college. We have relationships with Germany, Finland, several different programs. We've had international students. So it's been a fun journey, including this project with modern cabinet making that has about a 12-year history that I've been involved with it.
Well, the new book is amazing. It's pretty hefty here, and 1,000 pages. But there's a lot more here than just text and pictures on paper too, and we'll get to that. But first, I wanted to ask you, how did you approach the task of creating and updating a textbook to be used by schools all across the country?
So what's interesting is Goodhart Wilcox, the publisher, approached me in 2010, and they asked me if I would be interested, and I had to submit a bunch of writing samples and kind of going through the process. And then the project just kind of died. And then they came back to me in 2013, and they asked if I was interested, and I said no. I said my desire is to create an electronic book, a digital book that's interactive. And I was a little taken aback because the project just kind of fell off the radar. And I think part of that was the recession and a lot of issues that I didn't know about, maybe. But anyhow, they ultimately talked me into doing the 5th edition, and I still had the vision of this digital interactive book, but they weren't ready. They had a book that was last revised in 2005, looked like a lot of the old textbooks. It had over 700 black and white photos. And they said to me, there will be no black and white photos in the next edition. So that became my major task at that time, restructuring the book to a format that I thought made more sense, and then creating all those new pictures, which, most of them were shot by me in the shop because it's a lot easier to shoot your own photos than try to get the rights from somebody else. So that edition was about 1,500 hours of time, basically a year of time, quite in depth. So in depth that when I got done with that, I had to take a break and walk the Appalachian Trail because I just needed time to relax. But it was a good thing, but it still wasn't the vision that I wanted. So then they typically are on about a 7-year cycle with revising this textbook. So this textbook started in 1990. William Umstadt was the original author, and it's the last great book in print. All of the other ones have gone out of print, and so thankfully this publisher continues to maintain it and update it. And so when it came to the sixth edition, of course, yes, I was interested, but I wanted to take that next step, and the publisher was ready this time. If you think about it, back in 2013, 2014, streaming was not common. So, video, I've been doing video since 2004, but they weren't ready to have that platform and host all of the extra stuff that I wanted to do. This time they were, and the pandemic also has really pushed that. A lot of people were scrambling for resources during the pandemic, and so they've put the structure into place. And so it again, the opportunity to work with a talented team of professionals to really take my ideas and bring them into reality, I feel very grateful for.
Tell us a little bit more about those online and video resources.
Yeah. So
That's a pretty neat part of the book. And
yeah, exactly. I finally got access about a week and a half ago to the online version. Of course, I've taken all the videos, I edited them myself, but then I upload them, give them to the publisher, and I've never seen the kind of the master format. But you can go online and have access to all of this stuff. And so as you're paging through a digital format of the text, you can click on a picture and it becomes a see it in action feature. So you see a video of that machine in use, which is just fantastic, bringing it to life. I also did 6 career profiles. So there's 6 sections in the book, and at the introduction of each section, I have a career profile. Most of them are graduates of my program, but a video, anywhere from 5 to 8 minutes, video interview with people that are in the industry, whether they're a project manager, a finishing specialist, a CNC operator. So that's kind of a neat feature, especially for people students that are interested in going into the profession, but they really don't have a comprehensive vision of what's possible. We talk about, we all have a passion for working with our hands and building with wood, but there's a lot of ancillary occupations, support occupations in our industry, and so it's nice to be able to open the eyes of potential students that want to go into the industry.
well, I think too, there's an important sort of a subtle thing going on there where, if you can't envision yourself in the role that you're going, you're just not going to go there. And seeing people, I remember woodworking and metalworking textbooks, of decades ago, and you'd crack them open and look through, and here's dirty old machines and black and white photos, and some old guy doing something in a shop, and he doesn't look like me, he doesn't look like anybody I know. This isn't necessarily what I want to do. And
Yeah.
some of the updates that you've made here are subtle, but I think it's important. The pictures are real people and doing things with contemporary tools and equipment, and it makes a different story entirely.
Definitely having role models, having variety of people, and that's where I'm very fortunate in this program. About 25% of our students are female. We have a very diverse group of students, and they're my models for a lot of these pictures, right? And so I can just pull them aside and say, hey, I need to take a shot of this machine. Can you stand here and do your thing? And they start doing their thing, and so and that ends up represented in the book, which is like you say, is very important for people to see themselves, and where they could be in the industry.
Now, you're on the board of the Woodworking Career Alliance, and I know that for some of our audience who's not familiar with it, the WCA is an effort to establish standardized skills for the woodworking industry. You've integrated those skill standards into this textbook. How does that work?
So that was really cool, and it's especially nice when you can do something which requires less effort on your behalf. I've been passionate about the WCA. I was a founding board member. I was on the board for the first 10 years. I stepped off the board last year because I feel it's good to get some new blood in the organization. But what happened with that is the publisher was very interested in the work that I had done and what the WCA had done. And so my editor, scoured the book and correlated the WCA standards with everything that was covered in the book. And so that's where I say it's kind of funny because I didn't have to do a lot of work. She did the work for me, but it was a great effort. And so now, they have a correlation chart. So if you want to cover the standards for table saw or molder or whatever, you can look at the chart and find out where in the book that's covered.
Well, I think it's a testament to your skills in the book too, that she was able to pick up all of that stuff so easily.
Well, she was a great editor too. So that's why I say the whole team at Goodhart Wilcox. And it's interesting because myself as the author, I'm kind of in a vacuum. I do my work, and you can probably relate to this too. The writing you done, you don't always get a lot of feedback. But the neatest thing when I published the fifth edition, they sent me a copy where everybody on the team had autographed or signed their name on the inside cover. And I was blown away. There were like 45 or 50 people involved in this project. I had no idea. I had direct communication with my editor. On the sixth edition, most of my communication came with her assistant. Um, but yeah, there's a lot of people behind the scenes to really make a good product. And so this company really does due diligence to make a great product.
That's neat to see. Um, Now, you were involved in updating the text a number of years ago, as you mentioned, but
Right.
this edition, you've added some entirely new sections. Can you tell us about those?
Yeah. So two that were very high on my radar was installation. I come from a background of installation, so ran my own business, did a lot of high end trim work, and I see that as a huge need in the industry. The marriage of a carpenter, finished carpenter, and a cabinet maker, right? And those skills, and so I really wanted to highlight that in the book, and so they allowed me to write a new chapter. As you said, the book is quite comprehensive at over 1,000 pages. And so they were reluctant to add a number of chapters. I had a number of other items I wanted to do, including a separate chapter on lean. And they relented and said, we'll allow you to do a section on lean, not a whole new chapter. Uh, so that ended up fine, but I'm very proud of the installation aspect because it's hard to find good resources when it comes to installation.
Yeah, I thought that was a great section. I noticed, paging through the book, there are a number of places where you integrate practical professional tips and the kinds of things that many woodworkers don't learn until years on the job. I even
Yep.
picked up a few things I didn't know after decades of woodworking. I got a kick out of the bird picture in the molding section, talking about how to remember which way to orient crown molding.
Yep. Yeah, we've all seen it installed upside down and cringed, and so that's an analogy I use with my students to help them remember. And yeah, the professional tips. That's probably my favorite part of teaching with students. I do every day. They our students are here 32 hours a week, so it's pretty much full time. And at 9:30 they take a break. At 9:40 they come 5:45 they come back, and I do words of wisdom and just talk about experiences that I've had, whether it be a project that I'm currently working on or past experience. And they enjoy that. They remember those stories. I have students. I've got 22 years of graduates. I've got over 300 students that I've had the privilege to work with, and they'll come back and like retell those stories that I told them. And so it's neat to see what they remember.
That's great. One of the things that I think is important to the industry too is that you had information included in this on soft skills. And we hear so often from companies that they not only have trouble hiring anybody, but the people that they hire just don't know how to be an employee.
Yeah, and that was an initiative from the publisher, a directive, I should say, and that was a challenge uh, that I really actually enjoyed. At first, I wasn't so sure about how it was going to be to articulate this. But the more and more I worked on it, it became reflections on experience I had in the industry. And so again, it was almost storytelling or anecdotes why this is important. And so the end of every chapter has this feature called workplace skills. And you're right. I mean, employers come to me and it's like, it's kind of sad because they say, just send me somebody that will show up on time. And it's like, I'm teaching all these skills that I want them to come to you with. But their struggle is just reliability and proper decorum and things like that we take for granted, but that often nowadays, I guess, aren't being taught. And so students leave without those expectations. So I do think that is an excellent feature. And I'm proud of how it came out. Like I said, it was one of those that I struggled at first. How am I going to come up with, there's 55 chapters. How am I going to come up with 55 scenarios? But once it started happening, the flow just came naturally. And like I said, I was able to look back on a lot of experiences and why this is important and tell those stories.
What advice do you give educators for integrating this textbook into their programs?
Well, right now I'm really excited with the whole digital package. I was blown away when they sent me a link last week and I got to see it and how it works. And my understanding is that if a instructor specifies this book for their class, that they get access to the digital package at no cost. And then students can also buy access as well. And I have students right now that they'll complain. I don't want to carry my book back and forth from home. It's so heavy. So my advice is going to be, hey, you can get it digitally, you can get both, so you have options. But I definitely, for an instructor, there's a lot of legwork, and I didn't come from education. As I said, my background is in architecture, and I always feel like there's a lot of reinventing the wheel in education and in our industry. And so I've always tried to be very generous with my resources and get them out there. And my advice would be, don't try to reinvent the wheel. I know people that are trying to write their own materials and just spending hours. I've spent thousands of hours doing this. And I tell the same thing to industry. And that's why I was so passionate with the WCA. I've been hired by many companies to go in and create training programs. And I know they spend a ton of money. And it's like, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. There are good resources out there. So I'd encourage any instructor to try to get access to the digital package and see what it can do for you in the class. The publisher hired me to do a series of videos on layout and measurement, and that has been very successful. And that's, as you know, it's the starting point for everything we do. If you can't measure, you can't do woodworking. And so that's a 12 video series that they have access to. And again, the publisher said, we want you to do these in under 3 minutes. And they came out anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes. I said, it's hard to get meaningful content in less than 3 minutes. But I'm very proud at the end result. And so teachers can use these, but people in industry too. If you've got a new employee off the street that has no clue, these little mini lessons, and they come complete with worksheets and quizzes. So again, you don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah, I read in there, haven't had access to it, but that there's a whole learning management system that's all connected with this. And that's pretty impressive too. I have some experience working in the outside world and developing learning management systems for a few people. And boy, that's a lot of work involved there.
Yeah. So if you have to create it, it's a lot of work. So what the publisher has done, and I don't have all the formats that they support. We at the college, we use Blackboard. And so they have a plugin. And so basically all of these resources get dropped into Blackboard automatically. They work with the school IT departments. And so I asked them, I said, a lot of our students are on Google platform, and I'm still waiting to hear from them if they have that. But I know they have like 5 different platforms that they can supply and integrate for the school, so the instructor doesn't have to spend the time doing that.
That's really great. And I think your point too about employers using the book is great too. I think that this is more than just a textbook for schools. I think that this is a Bible for the industry, and can help promote the WCA mission, and fill in the gaps when employers don't have time to train people the way they ought to be trained too so much. And this is a resource to help people out and make the training more consistent across the whole breadth of the industry.
Thank you. And that is my intent. And that's why I have shared a lot of my teaching resources with the WCA. And so, employers, companies can become members of the WCA for $250 a year. They have access to these resources. And they have a learning plan that gives you step by step what to do. It typically starts with reading a section of modern cabinet making, certain pages, and then I have support materials that guide them through the path. I have links to videos, separate videos from the text. I've been doing videos, as I said, since 2004. So I have hundreds of videos out there. And people say, well, I can go to YouTube and find stuff. Yeah, well, you can go to YouTube and fall down a rabbit hole, and you might find some good content, but you'll find a lot of junk too.
Yeah, well, how do you know whether it's any good or not? This
Yeah.
is vetted material here that is definitely of a professional nature and professionally done, and is going to be consistent all the way through.
Thanks. Yeah, yeah. It's a lot of time and effort has gone into it, and I'm reflecting on 23 years now of teaching and smiling because I put in a lot of nights and weekends, and now I'm able to step back a little bit, and I'm a little bit more in a mentorship role in our program, bringing on the next generation as I'll be exiting at some point, and so I can enjoy the fruits of those labors, and that feels really good.
Well, you deserve it, Patrick. Now, where can people go to learn more about the book and order it?
So the best place the publisher encourages that they go to their website. So GW Goodhart Wilcox. So if you just Google G/W and modern cabinet making and sixth edition, I recommend because it's still Google search is still picking up on the fifth edition. But that'll take you to their website. They will sell direct. I'm sure you could purchase it off of Amazon or any of the online retailers as well. But do make sure you get the sixth edition
Yeah,
because
that's important.
that is important. That is where the new upgrades are.
That's great. Well, I appreciate you spending the time with us today. And again, it's an amazing achievement. Congratulations.
Thank you, Will. Always good to chat with you, and happy to talk to any of your audience if they have any questions.
That's it for today. If you're looking for more of our podcasts, you can find all of them at woodworkingnetwork.com/podcasts and in popular podcast channels. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. Thanks again to today's sponsor, Wood Pro Expo. If you have a comment or topic you'd like us to explore, contact me at will.sampson@woodworkingnetwork.com. Thanks for listening.